I was paralyzed in the archway of my in-laws' home, my eyes fixed on my 8-year-old daughter as she stared at her untouched plate, while her cousins devoured their third piece of baked ziti. Then, my mother-in-law Susan's voice sliced through the clatter of the dining room. "My daughter's children eat first. Her kids can have the leftovers." Susan didn't even bother to look up as she spooned another heaping portion onto Ava's plate. Heather, my sister-in-law, saw me standing there and a smirk played on her lips. She leaned over to where my Olivia and Liam were sitting on stools at the kitchen island, their plates gleaming and empty, and said, just loud enough for the whole room to hear, "They need to learn their place in this family." From his recliner, my father-in-law Robert nodded, his fork pausing mid-air. "Best they learn it now." Before we go any further, I want to say thank you for being here, where we talk about what it means to stand up for our kids. If you agree that every child deserves to be loved without conditions, especially by family, please think about subscribing. It costs nothing, and it helps our message reach more parents who might be feeling alone. Okay, let's get back to what happened. I didn't utter a single word. I simply walked to my children, helped them gather their coats and backpacks, and escorted them out of that house in stone-cold silence. They thought I was broken. They assumed I had finally accepted their casual cruelty and would come crawling back, just as I always had. What they didn't realize was that in precisely 20 minutes, their comfortable little world was about to shatter, and the screaming would begin. But for you to understand why that moment became the earthquake that leveled everything, you have to know how I became their personal cash machine, how I went from being Michael's bride-to-be to the family's emergency fund, and how 7 years of my generosity had turned me into someone they believed they could humiliate without any fear of consequence. It all started 3 months before my wedding. Susan called me at my office, her voice shaking with what I, in my naivety, mistook for genuine panic. The property taxes had gone up, she explained, a sudden, terrible surprise. Could I possibly help them? Just this once? $2,500. She swore on her life they'd pay it back in a few months. I was at my desk at the biotech firm where I worked as a lead clinical researcher, staring at the number. $2,500 wasn't a trivial amount, but it was manageable. I wrote the check that very afternoon. When I told Michael, he was overcome with gratitude. He wrapped me in a tight hug, telling me his family was so lucky to have me, that not just anyone would be so kind to people they had only just met. I didn't have the heart to tell him it wasn't about kindness. It was about desperation. My own parents had been killed in a tragic accident when I was in my junior year of college, leaving me with a small inheritance and a loneliness so profound it was a physical ache. Michael's family felt like the antidote. His mother, Susan, baked apple pies that filled the house with the scent of home. His father, Robert, told rambling stories that had everyone in stitches. His sister, Heather, had 2 kids, Ava and Noah, who started calling me Aunt Jessica almost immediately. When Susan hugged me and called me the daughter she never had, a small, broken piece of me started to feel whole again. I thought I had found my people. I thought I had found a family. I had no idea I'd just made the first deposit into a system designed to bleed me dry. Just a few months after our wedding, Robert needed some minor surgery. Their insurance would cover the bulk of it, but there was a gap, $4,000 this time. Susan cried when she asked, her voice thick with shame, explaining how mortified Robert was to ask for help, how it wounded his pride, but how much it meant that family was there for each other in tough times. I wrote that check even faster. Her relief, her gratitude, it made me feel essential in a way I had craved for years. That was my chance. That was when I should have seen the pattern forming. I should have asked why Robert's own adult daughter, Heather, wasn't chipping in, why their own savings couldn't cover a $4,000 shortfall, why every single family crisis seemed to land squarely on my shoulders. But I didn't ask. I didn't want to be the difficult one. I wanted to be the perfect daughter-in-law, the one who just got it, the one who truly belonged. My career had blossomed after grad school. Being a lead researcher at 32 was a big deal in my industry, and my salary was a reflection of that. I was earning nearly 4 times what Michael made as a high school physics teacher. His family was acutely aware of this imbalance, though they were subtle about it at first. Susan would comment on how proud she was that Michael had found a wife who was so successful, so capable of providing them with security. She'd often touch my arm when she said it, her eyes radiating what I thought was affection. I didn't see that she was really just sizing up my net worth. The requests began to escalate after that first year, with a chilling precision I was too eager to ignore. Susan would call just days after I mentioned getting a project bonus, suddenly facing a plumbing disaster that cost a staggering $18,000. The plumber's quote would appear in my inbox almost instantly, as if the whole crisis had been waiting in the wings for my bonus to hit. Robert's ancient car would finally give out right after my annual raise was confirmed, and he needed a new one immediately. How else could he get to his little part-time gig at the local garden center? And then came Heather's big drama. Her divorce from a guy she claimed was emotionally abusive had turned nasty, and she desperately needed a top-tier custody lawyer to protect Ava and Noah. $10,000 in retainers. Susan called me in hysterics, weeping about how family has to stick together, how we protect our own. Didn't I want to keep those precious children safe? I wrote the check without even talking to Michael, because what kind of monster says no to protecting children? I never stopped to ask why Heather's own parents, who lived in a paid-off house and had a retirement fund, couldn't float their own daughter's legal battle. I was too busy auditioning for a role in a family that had already cast me as the bank. 7 years. 7 years of my income plugging every leak in their financial boat. 7 years funding plumbing disasters, new cars, legal fights, and surprise medical bills. 7 years of being told I was a saint, a savior, the kind of daughter-in-law every mother dreams of. But what I wasn't tracking was the complete and total lack of reciprocity. It was a one-way street where my money flowed out, and all I got in return were more sob stories. When my daughter Olivia was hospitalized with a terrifying respiratory virus, and I was desperate for help with Liam, Susan was suddenly too swamped with her book club to babysit. When I suffered a miscarriage and was lost in a fog of grief, Heather couldn't possibly take an afternoon off from her part-time job at a local boutique to drop off a meal. When Michael and I were on the brink of collapse and needed a weekend away, everyone's calendars were suddenly, mysteriously full. But when their emergencies came knocking, I was family. I was obligated. I was expected to sacrifice. Michael never saw it. He was raised to believe his mother's word was gospel. His sister, Heather, as the biological child, held a status I could never attain, no matter how many checks I wrote. He genuinely thought my financial support was a demonstration of love, a way of cementing our family bonds. I wanted so badly to be a good wife, to be a part of his family, that I silenced the screaming alarm bells in my gut. I ignored how they never once celebrated my professional achievements. I ignored how they lauded Heather for juggling her 20-hour-a-week boutique job, while dismissing my 60-hour work weeks as just some corporate thing. I ignored the fact that their walls were a shrine to Ava and Noah, with dozens of photos, but not a single picture of Olivia or Liam. I ignored it all because I was terrified of being the outsider, the difficult wife who didn't understand their family values. So I kept signing the checks. I kept showing up for Sunday dinners where I was expected to cook and clean while Heather scrolled through social media. I kept hosting holidays because Susan's bad back apparently couldn't handle the strain, then watched as she spent hours playing on the floor with Ava and Noah. Pain-free. I was the solution to every problem, the daughter-in-law who never ever said no. Until the night I walked in and saw my children sitting before empty plates. Until I heard Susan declare that my kids could have the scraps. Until Heather told my babies they needed to learn their place. In that single brutal moment, 7 years of willful ignorance came crashing down. I finally understood. I wasn't funding family. I was funding my own children's humiliation. I gathered my kids and walked out without a word because I knew if I opened my mouth, a firestorm of rage would erupt, and I needed to be cold, sharp, and methodical for what was about to happen. In the car, Liam asked me in a tiny voice if we were in trouble. Olivia just stared out the window, silent tears tracing paths down her cheeks. And right there, in their driveway, I made a vow. I was done. I pulled out my phone and checked the time. 7:10 p.m. I started the engine and drove away, my mind already a whirlwind of calculations. Exactly what I had to do, exactly how I would make them feel the full weight of what they had just thrown away. 20 minutes. That's how long my kids sat there, hungry and humiliated. In 20 minutes, I was going to give them a taste of their own medicine. The day had started out completely normal. I dropped Olivia and Liam at their summer day camp, powered through 3 back-to-back presentations on a new drug trial, and waded through an inbox overflowing with urgent requests. By 4:30 p.m., I was still trapped in a conference room, listening to a senior scientist drone on about methodology adjustments. A knot of dread formed in my stomach. I wasn't going to make it to camp pickup by 5. I surreptitiously texted Susan from under the conference table, trying to look like I was taking notes. Running late at work. Any chance you could grab the kids from camp and keep them until 7? So sorry for the short notice. Her reply was almost instantaneous. Of course, honey. Would love the extra time with them. Take as long as you need. That should have been my first red flag. Susan never ever volunteered for extra time. There was always an excuse at the ready. Her back was acting up. She had a church thing. She wasn't feeling well. The sheer enthusiasm of her text should have set off every alarm, but I was just too relieved to think straight. I sent a grateful thank you and tried to focus on the meeting, already planning my escape. But I didn't escape. The scientist had follow-up questions. The department head had concerns. By the time I finally got to my car, it was 6:50. I shot Susan another text to let her know I was on my way. She replied with a smiley face and told me dinner would be ready when I got there. Dinner. She'd made them dinner. That should have been the second red flag. I pulled into their driveway at 7:10, the evening sun casting long, eerie shadows across their pristine lawn. I could hear kids laughing from inside the house, but the sound was fractured, dissonant, like 2 separate parties happening in different rooms. I grabbed my briefcase and walked up the path, pulling out the house key they had given me 7 years prior. Susan had made a whole production of it, holding it up at a family dinner and announcing that I was now officially one of them. The key, she'd said, was a symbol of my place in their home. I had actually shed a few tears of gratitude that day. Now, that same key felt like a lead weight in my hand. The front door opened into the living room, but the noise was coming from the back of the house. I walked toward the sounds of chatter and laughter, my heels clicking on the polished hardwood floors. The hallway opened up into their large, open-plan kitchen and dining area, and that's when I saw it, the scene that is now permanently burned into my memory. Heather's children, Ava and Noah, were seated at the formal dining table as if they were royalty. Ava, who was 10, had a cloth napkin tucked into her shirt, working her way through a massive serving of baked ziti. 8-year-old Noah was laughing at something his mom said, reaching for another piece of garlic bread. Their plates were piled high. Real china, the good stuff Susan only used for holidays. Beside their plates were crystal glasses of juice. My own children, Olivia and Liam, were perched on bar stools at the kitchen counter, a good 15 feet away. Their plates were stark white and completely empty, not a crumb. They were sitting perfectly still, hands in their laps, watching their cousins eat with the detached fascination of someone watching a TV show they weren't allowed to be in. The segregation was so deliberate, so calculating, my brain struggled to process it. This was no accident. This was a statement. Susan was at the dining table, her back to my kids, serving Ava another scoop of pasta. She was smiling, chatting with Heather, who was scrolling on her phone with one hand. Robert was in his recliner, a plate balanced on his lap, watching the news. No one had even seen me. I was a ghost in the doorway of my own recurring nightmare. "Oh, Jessica, you're just in time," Susan said when she finally noticed me. She didn't look ashamed or guilty. She looked pleased, as if I'd arrived at a convenient moment. We just got done with dinner. Done. As if my children had eaten. I couldn't find my voice. A cold fury was spreading through my chest, and I walked over to Olivia and Liam, forcing my voice to sound level and calm. "Hey guys, how was your day?" "Fine," Olivia said, her voice carefully neutral. That was the voice she used when she was trying not to be a bother. At 8 years old, she had already learned to shrink herself to make others comfortable. When did that happen? When had I let that happen? "Did you have fun playing together?" I asked, looking from my kids to their cousins. Liam shook his head. Thank God for Liam's blunt honesty. He hadn't yet mastered the art of the social lie. "They played different games," he said softly. I scanned the room again, really seeing the layout. My kids on the periphery, on temporary seating. Heather's kids sprawling, owning the space. "What did everyone have for dinner?" I asked, though I knew the answer would feel like a knife twisting in my gut. "Grandma made ziti," Ava announced from the table. "It's the best." I looked at my daughter. "And what did you two have?" Olivia hesitated, her eyes flickering towards Susan. That single glance told me everything about the power structure in this house. "We weren't that hungry," she mumbled, but I knew my daughter. She was always ravenous after camp. "Actually, there wasn't quite enough to go around for everyone," Susan interjected smoothly, "so I just made them some toast earlier." They were fine with it. I stood up and walked to the counter where a huge glass baking dish sat. There were at least 6 large portions of ziti left, enough to feed my kids twice. The lie was so blatant, so lazy, she didn't even care that I could see the proof right in front of me. "I think I'll make them a plate now," I said, my hand reaching for the serving spoon. "Jessica, honestly, they're fine," Susan said, her voice gaining an edge. "They already ate." "But Ava and Noah seem to need a full meal," I observed, my voice dangerously quiet. "They seem to need seconds and even thirds." The room fell silent. "My daughter's children have different needs," Susan said, and the casual cruelty of it stole my breath. "Her kids can have the leftovers if there isn't enough. That's just how it is in families like ours." Families like ours, as if the problem was some complex dynamic and not her deliberate choice to exclude my children. I started scooping pasta onto 2 plates anyway, my hands trembling with rage. Behind me, I heard Heather's chair scrape back. I heard her walk over, and then I heard her voice, aimed not at me, but at my children. "You two are sweet, but you need to learn your place in this family," she said, a saccharine smile on her face. "My kids come first. That's just the way it is." Olivia's fork, which she had picked up in anticipation, clattered back onto the counter. Liam's eyes welled with tears he fought to hold back. From the living room, Robert's voice drifted over, calm and matter of fact. Best they learn it now. I watched my children's faces as they absorbed this lesson, this cruel, life-altering lesson about their worth. Something inside me snapped. "Come on, kids," I said quietly. "Get your things. We're leaving." "Jessica, don't be so dramatic," Susan called out, but I was already helping Olivia off her stool. "We can discuss this." I didn't answer. I put the 2 plates of pasta I'd just served into the microwave and set it for 2 minutes. If my children were going to eat, they were going to eat a hot meal, right here, right now. "Talk about what?" I finally said, my voice eerily calm. "About how you believe my children are second-class citizens in this family? About how you think it's acceptable to humiliate them?" The microwave beeped. I pulled out the plates and set them in front of Olivia and Liam. Their faces lit up. That pure, simple joy at being fed broke my heart. They shouldn't have to be grateful for basic human decency. "You're twisting my words," Robert grumbled from his recliner. "We love those kids." I looked at him, really looked at him. When was the last time you came to one of Liam's soccer games?" Silence. "When was the last time you asked Olivia about her art class?" More silence. When was the last time you treated them like they actually belong here? While my kids ate, I pulled out a stool and sat with them, watching them devour their food with an intensity that made my chest ache. They ate as if they were afraid someone would snatch the plates away. "So what did you guys do all day?" I asked gently. "Watch TV," Liam said between mouthfuls. "Did you play any games? It was so nice outside." A heavy silence hung in the air before Olivia answered, her eyes fixed on her plate. "Ava and Noah went to the park with Grandma." "That sounds nice. Did you go with them?" Silence again, the kind that screams. "Why didn't you go to the park, honey?" I asked, already knowing the answer would destroy me. "Grandma said she could only safely watch 2 kids," Olivia explained matter of fact, "and they asked first. Asked first, as if my children's grandmother was a theme park ride with a limited capacity." I glanced at Susan, who was now furiously scrubbing the already spotless dining table. "You couldn't take 4 children to a park?" "It's a safety issue, Jessica," she said, not looking at me. "I can only handle so many at once." "Risk what?" I cut her off. "Risk treating my children with the same care you give your other grandchildren? That's not what I said, but it's what you did." Heather, who had been quiet, suddenly put her phone down. "Actually, Jessica, since we're on the topic, the next few weekends are going to be pretty packed for us. The family reunion is coming up and there are a few other events." "Oh, great. The kids would love a reunion." The temperature in the room plunged. "Well," Heather said, her smile not reaching her eyes, "these are more for, the real family. It just keeps things simpler. Real family." There it was, the word that officially branded my children as outsiders. "I see," I said. "And you think it's healthy to teach my children that they're not real family?" "We're not saying that," Susan protested. "We're just saying that Heather's kids will always have a special place because they carry our bloodline. It's just natural." Natural. She was using biology to justify bigotry. "So at the reunion," I said slowly, "when Ava and Noah are in the family photos, where are Olivia and Liam supposed to be? Waiting in the car?" "You're being difficult," Heather snapped. I looked around the room. The walls were covered in photos of Ava and Noah. School pictures, vacation shots, birthday parties, not one picture of my kids, not a single one. "Let me ask you something," I said, standing up. "When was the last time you called just to talk to my kids? Not to ask me for a loan, not to ask me for a handout, just to talk to them." The question hit them like a physical blow. "That's not fair," Susan said weakly, "isn't it? You remembered to call when Robert needed a new car. You remembered to call when Heather needed a lawyer. You remembered to call when the pipes burst. But you've never once called on Olivia's birthday. Not once in 8 years." "We send a card," Heather muttered. "You send a generic grocery store card with a $10 bill inside. The same card you give the mailman." I turned to my children. "Get your things. We're leaving." "Jessica, please," Susan begged. "Let's not do this in front of the children." "You should have thought of that before you starved them in front of the children," I said, my voice like ice. At the door, I turned back. "We'll talk again, when you're ready to be honest about whether you love my children or if you just love my bank account." The flash of pure panic on her face was all the answer I needed. I walked my kids to the car, buckled them in, and just sat there, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. In the rearview mirror, I saw their small, blank faces. 3 blocks away, Olivia's voice, small and fragile, broke the silence. "Mom, why don't Grandma and Grandpa like us as much as Ava and Noah?" The question shattered me. I wanted to give her the easy, comforting lie, but I couldn't. Not anymore. "They should love you exactly the same, sweetie," I said, my voice trembling. "Grandparents are supposed to, but they don't." This from Liam, flat and clinical. "We're not blood. Aunt Heather said so." I had to pull the car over. I couldn't see the road through the tears. I put the car in park and pressed my palms to my eyes, trying to physically stop the sobs. My 7-year-old son had just stated his own perceived worthlessness like it was a weather report. "Listen to me," I said, turning to face them. "What they said is ugly and wrong. You are their grandchildren, and if they are too broken to see how amazing you are, that is their failure, not yours. Do you understand?" They nodded, but their eyes were filled with a doubt that had been planted and watered for years. "How long has this been happening?" I asked. They exchanged a silent sibling look. "Always, I think," Olivia whispered. "We just thought maybe we were being sensitive. Always." The word echoed in my mind. Every birthday, every holiday, every time I dropped them off, this had been their reality, and I'd been too desperate for a family to see it. Memories flooded back. The Christmas when their living room was a gallery of photos of Heather's kids, and Susan claimed she was waiting for good pictures of mine. The beach trip we weren't invited on because of limited space, even though the rental house had 4 bedrooms. The school plays, the soccer games, the award ceremonies where my kids scanned the crowd for faces that were never there. When we got home, Michael was in the kitchen, cheerful and oblivious. "What happened?" he asked, his tone already defensive, bracing to protect his family. I told him everything. I watched his face shift from shock to discomfort to a familiar, weary resignation. He knew. He had always known on some level. "They probably didn't mean it like that," he said, and the betrayal of those words was a fresh wound. "You know how Mom is." "She told our children to wait for scraps, Michael. Your sister told them to know their place. What part of that is open to interpretation?" "I'm sure there's context you're missing," he floundered. "Stop," I said, my voice sharp. "Stop defending them. Your family just taught our children they are worthless, and you're telling me I'm missing context?" "I'm not saying you're overreacting. I'm just saying we should talk to them." "I heard them, Michael. I saw them. This happened." He was quiet, the internal battle raging on his face. Loyal son versus protective father. "They've always been good to us," he finally managed. "Have they? When Olivia was in the hospital, where was your mother? When I had a miscarriage, did your sister even call?" "That's different. They had things going on." "But we can drop everything when they need money," I said quietly. "Funny how that works." I walked to my home office and opened my laptop, pulling up our financial records. Michael hovered in the doorway. "What are you doing?" "Something I should have done 7 years ago. I'm tallying up exactly how much family support we've provided." The spreadsheet came together, a monument to my own foolishness. $2,500 here, $4,000 there, $18,000 for the plumbing, $10,000 for the lawyer, $25,000 for Robert's new car. The numbers climbed and climbed. When I hit the total, I just stared. $147,000. In 7 years, I had given Michael's family $147,000, and they had paid me back by starving my children. $147,000, I said out loud. Michael made a choking sound. "That's not possible." "Oh, it is." I checked. I scrolled through the list, my voice devoid of emotion. $2,500 for taxes, $4,000 for your dad's surgery, $10,000 for Heather's lawyer, $18,000 for the plumbing, $25,000 for your dad's car, $7,000 for your mom's dental implants. "I didn't realize," he whispered. "That's the whole problem, Michael. You never wanted to realize." He sank into a chair, head in his hands. "They're my parents. I can't just abandon them." "I'm not asking you to abandon them. I'm asking you to see them for who they are. They used us, Michael. They used my grief and my loneliness to fund their lifestyle, all while teaching our kids they were less than. That's not fair." "Your mother told our children to wait for scraps," I repeated, my voice rising. "Your sister told them to know their place. While we paid their bills, they taught our children they don't deserve dignity. How is it not fair to point that out?" A soft knock came at the door. It was Olivia. Mom, are you and Dad fighting about Grandma's house? She asked, her eyes wide. The question tore through me. No, sweetie, none of this is your fault, not one bit. I hugged her tight. Does Dad think we're being too sensitive? She asked. She'd already learned to invalidate her own feelings. Dad is learning some things he should have seen a long time ago, I said carefully. After she went to bed, my phone buzzed. It was my best friend, Megan, a paralegal I'd known since college. How'd it go? Call me. I'd sent her a frantic text on the drive home. I called her and poured out the whole sordid story. She listened patiently until I was done. I'm not surprised, Jessica, she said sadly. I've been seeing this for years. You just weren't ready to see it. What do I do, Meg? What do you want to do? I thought about it. An apology felt hollow. What I wanted was for them to understand, truly understand, what they had thrown away. I want them to feel the consequences, I admitted. Actually, Megan said, her voice shifting from friend to professional, you have more power than you think. Didn't you co-sign their mortgage refinance a few years ago? Yes. Their credit was a mess. And Robert's car? I guaranteed the loan. Jessica, she said, and I could hear her mind working. You are legally on the hook for their biggest debts. That also means you have the legal right to remove yourself from those obligations. My heart started pounding. What are you saying? I'm saying you can pull the plug. You can notify the bank you're removing yourself as co-signer. They'd have to refinance, which they can't. The house goes into foreclosure. You can withdraw the guarantee on the car. It gets repossessed. You can stop paying the supplement on Heather's rent. She gets evicted. The sheer destructive power of it was terrifying and exhilarating. How fast? The notifications would go out within 48 hours. The panic would be immediate. I thought about 20 minutes. 20 minutes of my children being taught they didn't matter. I need to think, I told her. I stayed up all night researching mortgage law, co-signer rights, and guarantor obligations. By sunrise, I knew exactly what I was going to do. The next day, I dropped the kids at camp, the air thick with their silent anxiety. Are we ever going to see Grandma and Grandpa again? Olivia asked. I don't know, sweetie. Is it our fault? Her voice cracked, and I had to grip the car door. No, nothing is your fault. 3 blocks later, I had to pull over, overwhelmed by sobs. It's okay, Mom, Liam said from the back seat. We're used to it. Used to it. My 7-year-old was used to being treated like dirt by his own family. After I dropped them off, I sat in the parking lot and made the calls. First to my lawyer, Linda, who Megan had recommended. She was ready. The mortgage first, she confirmed. We'll initiate the removal process. They'll have 90 days to refinance or the bank begins foreclosure. The car loan is simpler, she continued. We send a written notice withdrawing your guarantee. They'll have 30 days to secure new financing or the car is repossessed. And Heather's rent? Just stop paying, she said. Her landlord will deal with it when the rent comes up short. I spent the day in a daze, working from home, watching the clock. At 7 p.m., exactly 20 minutes before the time of the incident the night before, I started making the official confirmations. First the bank, then the dealership, then an email to Heather's landlord. It took less than 5 minutes. Everything was in motion. Now all I had to do was wait. Michael came home at 7:20, walking on eggshells. He was quietly eating leftovers when my phone rang. Susan. I put it on speaker. Jessica, honey, the bank just called. Her voice was shrill with panic. They said you removed yourself from the mortgage. It has to be a mistake. There's no mistake, Susan. I removed myself. But we'll lose the house. Then you'd better figure out how to pay for it. You have 90 days. Jessica, please, we can talk about this. Can we? Because yesterday you said my children could wait for scraps. You told them to know their place, so now you're going to learn yours. I hung up. Michael stared at me, his face ashen. What did you do? I cut them off. The mortgage, the car, Heather's rent, it's all over. They'll lose everything. Good. My phone rang again. Robert. I let it go to voicemail. A moment later, a third call. Heather, sobbing hysterically. You told my landlord you're not paying anymore. I'm going to be evicted. Then you should ask your parents for help, I said calmly. Oh, wait, they're about to be homeless too. The line went dead. I looked at Michael. I timed it, I said. 20 minutes, the exact amount of time our kids sat in front of empty plates. Every second of panic they're feeling right now, I wanted it to match. Jessica, they're going to be ruined. Yes, I said, they are. The next week was a siege. Voicemails oscillating between tearful pleas and venomous rage. Texts threatening legal action, which my lawyer shut down with a cease and desist letter. Heather even showed up at my office screaming in the lobby until security removed her. The most surprising part was the calls from extended family. It turned out Susan had been running a fundraising campaign for years, telling everyone I was a financial tyrant who was holding money over their heads. I sent them the spreadsheet, the bank statements, and the recording from that dinner. One by one, they called me back, furious and apologetic. They had been sending Susan thousands of dollars for years based on her lies. The web of deceit was bigger than I ever imagined, and watching it unravel was a cold, hard comfort. Michael was caught in the crossfire. He saw the texts. He heard the voicemails. One night, I overheard him on the phone with his mother. Mom, stop. I'm not going to make her change her mind, because you told her children to wait for scraps. There was a long pause. I don't care how you meant it, he finally exploded. That's what you said. That's what our kids heard. When he came downstairs, his eyes were red. She doesn't get it. She will never get it. It was the first time he had fully, unequivocally taken our side. Olivia asked me if Grandma was mad because we stopped giving her money, he said, his voice breaking. She connected the dots, Jessica. Our 8-year-old understands that their love was transactional. He finally saw it, all of it. I'm sorry, he whispered, taking my hand. I should have protected you. I should have protected them. You see it now, I said. That's what matters. The next few months were a blur of consequences. The foreclosure notice was served. The car was repossessed. Heather had to get a roommate. They had to sell their furniture to afford the deposit on a small, run-down apartment. I waited to feel something. Satisfaction, guilt, anything. But there was only a quiet emptiness. 4 months later, a letter arrived, handwritten, from Susan. I've started this letter 20 times, it began. You were right about everything. We were cruel to your children. And the truth is, I was jealous of you, of your career, your success, your independence. I saw you as competition, not family. So I took your money and I let you think it bought you a place, but I never really let you in. I am not asking for money. I am not asking for anything. I am just so sorry. I showed it to Michael. What do you think? He asked. I think it's the first honest thing she's ever said to me, I replied. But I don't know if it changes anything. We had started counseling. It was hard, painful work. Michael had to unlearn a lifetime of conditioning. I had to face my own role in letting it all happen. But we were slowly healing. Our kids were healing too. They stopped walking on eggshells. They stopped apologizing for existing. They started taking up space, being loud and messy and gloriously imperfect. 6 months after it all imploded, the 4 of us were having dinner. Just us. Michael made pasta. The kids were telling silly stories. And I looked around the table and realized this was it. This was family, safe, equal, unconditional. The screams that had filled Susan's house that night were the sound of a toxic empire collapsing. I had lit the match, and I would never, ever regret it. My children deserved a mother who would burn the world down to protect them. They deserved to know their worth was not up for debate. And if teaching them that meant someone else had to learn a hard lesson about consequences, that was a price I was more than willing to pay. This story of a mother's fierce protection and ultimate justice is one for the ages. If you were cheering for Jessica, hit that like button. My favorite moment was when she timed the financial ruin to exactly 20 minutes. What was your favorite part of her payback? Let me know in the comments below. And for more stories of boundaries and a mother's strength, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell. You won't want to miss what's next. End of story.